You eventually became homeless.
Yes.
How did you get to that point? Growing up without a father, how did that shape your mindset?
My mum's fault, it was my fault.
Welcome to episode 1 of the Untold Chapters. My name's Wesley, and today I'll be interviewing Gabriel. Gabriel is the owner of a tech company called Z Digital. He's also the youngest trustee for the YMCA in the last 180 years. Make sure you like and subscribe. So for those who've never come across your name before, who is Gabriel Imevbore?
Gabriel Imevbore is someone that represents overcoming the odds, someone that represents ambition, someone that represents change, positivity. I reckon a lot of people would say, to come around Gabe to feel that positive.
Yeah.
I think first and foremost, Gabriel Imevbore represents, ambition, man.
Yeah. Okay. So you've achieved a lot, but I want to rewind. What was life like for you growing up?
I'm always grateful for the beginnings.
Yeah.
I was raised in a single parent household.
Yeah.
Mom was very hardworking. I can always remember mom doing the best she could to provide for me and my brother. I think early life, before my mom went through bankruptcy, and went through the spout of depression.
Yeah.
Mom was providing a lot for us, and tried to always give us what we needed.
Yeah.
And I can always remember, getting that love and affection.
Yeah.
And always be encouraged to think. That's definitely, how early life was. I remember even with punishments, the way mom was. I remember this one time I was on my bike.
Yeah.
with my brother. You do the bike ride.
Yeah.
And we were riding now, and I remember we were coming back to the house, and we just gone for a bike ride in Sutton Park, and we're riding back, and you know what brothers can be like,
Yeah.
what boys can be like, boisterous.
Yeah.
I remember my brother pushed me into this cherry bush, man. I'm like, I can't see it. And I come out this cherry bush, and I must have just blew off this wing mirror on a car. But got back to the house. I remember just pushing my bike, I'm crying. And I remember my brother just ran in, and my mom said, "Why are you crying? What you doing?" And I said, I didn't mean to. Knocked off this woman's wing mirror. My mom was fuming. And she's like, right, this is what you're going to do. This is your punishment. You're going to write this letter to the woman whose car it was. You're going to write it word for word, exactly like me. Neat handwriting. No punctuation mark out of place. And if you get one punctuation mark out of place, you have to rewrite it again. But the way my mom punished me was because I hated writing. I didn't like writing. I didn't like reading. So she would use punishments that at the time I hated, but were actually very valuable skills. One way of putting how effective that punishment was is, writing is one of my most effective abilities now.
Okay.
So I wrote the poetry book X Marks the Spot during kind of lockdown times. Sold £1,000 worth of copies, but that's down to the punishment that my mom gave me. Learning how to write and stuff. So I can always remember those things with my mom. Her unconventional ways of doing things.
Sounds like you grew up in a Jamaican culture.
Yeah, for sure. You know how it goes.
Did you grow up in church as well?
Yeah, so Roman Catholic. I grew up in, we lived off Newman Road in Arlington. And I went to the Abbey RC primary school, so it was a Roman Catholic school.
Okay.
Grew up in, had my Sundays in church, so very Jamaican in that aspect, praising the Lord and whatnot. Yeah.
You've achieved a lot,
yeah.
But I want to rewind. What was life like for you growing up?
Yeah, life was tough in aspects as well. Growing up in a single parent household, just being raised with my mother, not having my dad around, we definitely felt that, in that experience.
Yeah. So growing up without a father, how did that shape your mindset?
I think you don't recognize how much it shapes you until you start getting a bit older. Until you see, other young men interacting with their fathers, and then you start to realize, I haven't got a dad around, and you start to question why. I think when I was younger, I harbored that anger, that resentment. Why is my dad not around? Is it my mom's fault? Is it my fault? And I think as I started to grow, and I started to read a lot more. I started to think differently. My first kind of effective way at handling not having my dad around, it had to come when I was about 15.
Okay.
I started rapping, and because I used to write all my own lyrics, I'd write a lot about how I felt, poetically around, not having a father around, and dealing with that as a young man, and allowing me to kind of relinquish those emotions. I think that was a very effective way for me to kind of figure out my own understanding
I get that.
of what it was like without having a dad around. And then as I kind of started to begin to grow, I began to read, autobiographies. So like, I read James Dyson's autobiography. I read Richard Branson's autobiography. I read Reginald Lewis, the first black billionaire's autobiography. Don Peebles, successful real estate mogul in America. So like these male figures, they became like mentors for me through book form. But I was starting to realize I can formulate my own way of becoming my own man without having a father, by learning from other men that
So
are
do you
leaders
look at those men as father figures for
I
yourself?
guess in a sense, like, I guess vicariously. In a sense, you take advice from these men that have been successful in their own rights through what they've written in their autobiographies, and you mold that into your own path. And then on top of that, I started training in the gym when I was 15. I was around strong men then as well. Gained a lot of close friends that I have now. And I think from that, you kind of get other men's perspectives, strong men's perspectives on life. And because I'm always asking the questions, I'm starting to figure out, okay, what type of man do I want to be? This man represents that man represents this. And I've got to figure out of all these experiences, what man I want to be. And, my first ever girlfriend at the time, she was in a 2-parent household.
Okay.
Her dad was entrepreneurial, and I learned a lot from him. In terms of family, and how he raised his family and how he looked after his family and cared for his family. And sometimes I just analyze him. And I remember he used to say to my ex-girlfriend at the time, he used to say like, "Oh, I've caught like Gabe just analyzing me," but I wouldn't realize I'm doing it. But I think I was just learning. Okay, this is what a successful man does, and this is how a successful man looks after his family. So in all those experiences, I'd always be taking something that I could learn, from those people that I've been around or that I'd read about, and then implemented their strategies into my life.
Okay. And you did mention briefly about your mum having mental health problems, like mental health struggles as you're growing up. Did that shape you in any way?
I think so, because I love my mum to bits, man, and I'm so proud of the journey she's been on, and how she's been able to recover and bounce back from the hardship she's faced. But growing up, when you are around a mother that's going through that depression, you become hyper aware in a sense. You want to make sure that you're managing those emotions, that is she upset today, is she happy today. You compensate for that,
of course.
I think in effect, it's made me a greater businessman because, I'm hyper aware to what my clients and what my customers' needs are, or, as a partner now with my current girlfriend, I'm more aware to how she might feel. And just people in general, I'm very aware as to how they may be feeling in a situation. So it worked out in that way. But I think, when you're younger, you don't realize how much you might be compensating for how somebody else feels at the detriment to your old self. So you have to learn to know where the boundary is in terms of, what is the okay place for, managing someone else's emotions or, making sure someone's okay, but not at the detriment of your own self, and it's as you mature, it's finding that balance,
So what do you do to prioritize your mental health? Considering you've got a lot going on like in life, business, career.
I'm a gym fanatic. So, training is something that's very important for me. Sleep, making sure I get my sleep, man. I gotta sleep at least 7 hours. If I don't get my sleep, then I'm a different guy. Rest and relaxation. I know my girlfriend is always saying to me all the time, you got to sleep, you got
Yeah,
to rest, because I'm a workaholic in that sense. But rest is very important, and also downtime. Like,
yeah.
I play a lot of games.
Okay.
For me, that's like recreational. You gotta have like a recreational outlet. So if I'm not reading or listening to a podcast, I might be playing a strategy game, something like that. Still exercising, sort of learning, but having some recreational space, I think, is important.
So what's your go-to strategy game?
Go-to strategy game at the moment, I keep playing. It's called Three Kingdoms, right? And basically, what it is, it's like, what's the best way to describe it? It's Total War. Have you ever heard of Total?
I've heard it. Yeah, I've heard of
so
Total War.
Total War Three Kingdoms is like my go-to strategy game. So if ever I'm in the office and I'm in a moment where we're in some quiet time, I'll jump on Total War, jump on Three Kingdoms, and basically it's like the Han Dynasty of China.
Yeah.
And you pick a faction, and you basically have to take over China as that faction. But what I love about it is diplomacy's involved.
Okay.
You've got to build cities.
Yeah.
You got to build towns. You got to manage your finances.
Yeah.
You got to manage troops. You got to send troops down here. You got to build alliances.
Yeah.
It's all that involved in Total War. So there's a lot of strategy involved, and I love game theory. And I think game theory relates to life a lot.
Yeah.
So Total War is great for that.
Yeah. Talking about Three Kingdoms, I've got to mention what happened to us this morning.
Yes.
So me and Gabriel were at a coffee shop this morning with my cousin Daryl, and someone approached us and said, called us the Three Monkeys.
Oh my gosh, man.
Yeah, which set our day off nicely.
Sad.
Yeah.
Sad. I think you think to yourself, and we had that conversation outside the coffee shop after. You think to yourself, have we moved on from certain things, and being, three young black guys being referred to as monkeys. Some might say it's tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
That person didn't mean it or whatever, and it doesn't equate to anything. But, knowing the history of being referred to certain things, it does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I feel like it has an effect on you, and you think, is this a society that we're still living in? But as I said to both you and Darren, man, in my head, it's just like I gotta work harder.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I gotta work harder because, this person may have that perception.
What was his context?
And I personally think his context was, I feel like it was uncomfortable. In my opinion, as I explained to you both, my opinion was that this person was uncomfortable with the fact that he saw three young black guys who dress well, look healthy, clean cut, going to get a coffee in a coffee shop that evening. And I feel like he was uncomfortable with that. So I feel like he experienced some sort of cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
And in that cognitive dissonance, to feel comfortable, he had to refer to something that made him feel like he was above us in that situation, or made us feel uncomfortable to match his level of uncomfortability. And to me, it just showed that, we're on the right path, because when someone has to do that to make you feel uncomfortable, it's not a reflection of who we are, it's a reflection of who they are.
Yeah.
So for us, we're in the right place,
True.
because if someone has to do that to try and diminish our character, it shows that our character is at a high level and at a high standard, and everything is about framing things, perspective. And I'll be damned if I frame something in a negative perspective for us. I'll always frame something in a way that can situate us to be in a winning position. And the way I see it is that he was uncomfortable with us being in that scenario, and he wanted to bring us down to his level, which indicates to me we were above the level he was at, and we still wished him a nice day, man. Look at that.
Exactly. What was life like growing up for you? So what was you like as a child? Was you angry? Was you have you always been this motivated?
You know what? I've always been ambitious. Think my brother says to me all the time, like, Gabe gets what Gabe wants. Like, I've always been driven. And believe it or not, my favorite word when I was a child was company. And he says, like, it's so ironic that you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to have your own business and do this and do that, because your favorite word back then was company. And you'd be possessive over that word. I don't know if that was like an intuitive thing, but, I've always wanted to go after what I set my mind to. So I think, I've always been hyper aware. My mom tells me this one story, man, that always sits with me. And I think it is a clear example of who I am, and that's finding my own way. My mom once, bless her, mom, this isn't not to take a dig on you. You had a lot of stress going on. You probably one of those things. But we're on Erdington High Street, and she lost me on Erdington High Street. She was panicking. Said, "Oh my God, you know what children are like." Turn around for 1 second, 1 second there, 1 second there.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Gone?
Yeah.
So my mom had lost me on Erdington High Street. And she said, "Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna have to call the police. I'm gonna have to go home, call the police, and say that Gabriel was missing." And when she got back to the house, I was just sitting there on the step. I was 3 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, so 3 years old to be able to analyze the high street and know my way back home, from where we were. And she said I wasn't crying or anything. I was just sitting there waiting. So I must have known my mom's gonna come back. I know my way home. I just wait here, So I think I've always been self-reliant in that sense, in finding my own way. And I think that was a poignant, moment for me when my mom told me that. I was like, you know what? I've always been that way.
Yeah, of course.
From a child, I've always known that I'm gonna find my way back and I'll be okay. So I think that's what I've always been like,
Okay. So for those who don't know, you eventually became homeless.
Yes.
How did you get to that point?
You know what it is? It's so much stress, hardship, adolescence. When I think of how the breakdown in communication happened, at the time I'd wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was reading Richard Branson and I was watching Evan Carmichael.
Just to interrupt that bit, is there any other entrepreneurs in your family?
My mom was a businesswoman.
Okay.
Yeah, so she had a training company when she was younger. So I think it does come from that. And what I know of my dad, he's always wanted to be an entrepreneur in essence. So I guess there is that DNA in me to want to hustle, right? But going back to the point, I'm growing into that breakdown in communications. I remember I started reading about entrepreneurialism. I was reading Richard Branson's book. I was listening to Top 10 Rules of Success by Evan Carmichael. And at the time I was kind of working in River Island, contributing to the household. And I remember saying to myself, I just want to be an entrepreneur. I don't want to have to work at River Island or do none of this. I just want to figure out how to be an entrepreneur. But in my youth, what I didn't realize was that you don't have that choice. What other people may have a choice in doing, which is they want to just quit their job and just figure out how to be this. You don't have that choice. But I didn't realize that. And that's what caused the breakdown in communications. I quit the job trying to figure out how to be an entrepreneur. Didn't have that income to contribute to the household anymore. Fracture. Locks change. You're out.
Yeah. And what were you doing to get by? Like where was he sleeping at this time?
I had to go to emergency accommodation. So St. Basil's emergency accommodation. So I remember the first night I stayed in that emergency accommodation, man. I had a black bin bag, man, this little brown fleecy blanket, man. And I remember the first time I slept on this mattress. Had like a mattress protector on it, this plastic mattress protector, man. I remember the sticky back feeling, man. Thinking, you know that? You know that one? Yeah, you have to deal with it, bro. I remember the first time I stayed in there. I remember just like lying on the bed thinking, man, how the heck did man even end up here? You know what I'm saying? I'm young, I'm in this situation. Like, this is crazy, So that was like that occasion, like being in the emergency accommodation, and it's the first time you kind of like you're on your own. You know what I mean? You gotta kind of figure this thing out with no support. Obviously I have my friends and stuff, but when the lights cut and it's it's curtains closing, it's you got to sleep in that emergency accommodation. Ain't nobody else.
Of course.
Everyone's gone home to their life. Everyone's gone home to their families. Everyone's gone home to their situation. This is your situation. And that's the feeling I remember,
Did you learn anything from?
Oh, 100%, man. I think always be grateful, because there can always be a worse situation. I remember, I talk about this all the time, the Monopoly nights that I used to have. I remember we used to have these Monopoly nights in the emergency accommodation at Milner Court, man. And I remember whenever I used to play Monopoly, I played with people that, like, we were in the same building, but maybe from a mental health perspective, they might have been in a lot worse situation than I was, or just physicality wise, you could tell that the hardship of the situation
Yeah.
was taking a toll on them more so. But you know, I used to play Monopoly with everyone and be like, these people they're just like me.
Yeah.
We're all in this
Yeah.
boat together. And I remember I used to play these games of Monopoly. And you know, I used to think, you know, never judge anyone.
Yeah.
Because, you know, everyone's got a brain, you know, and I remember I used to say to myself, if I don't get Mayfair and Park Lane in every game of Monopoly I play, I'm never making it out of here, man.
Yeah.
And I have to barter for Mayfair and Park Lane, man. You know, I sell my electric company, sell my train stations, sell my Trafalgar Square, you know, my Piccadilly Circus and whatnot to try and get Mayfair and Park Lane. But what it taught me was, going back to the game theory thing, that even in the smallest of situations, you can find a way to win.
Yeah.
And even though you're playing Monopoly, getting Mayfair and Park Lane and winning the game is still motivation.
Of course.
And that motivation can be transferred to your real life.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned, you know, how to take the feeling of winning in Monopoly and transfer that motivation to my own life. You know, so saying to myself,
it's a good mindset to have.
Even in the smallest occasions, a win is a win.
Yeah.
And a win is transferable.
Yeah.
And that motivation got me through that, man.
Yeah. Did you ever feel like, what am I looking for? Did you ever feel like, this is my life, you can accept the way it is?
No, because, you know, I got destined tattooed on my back.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that for me, I've always believed I'm destined for greatness, which is why I got that tattoo. You know, I've said that I believe it that much, I'm gonna ink it into my skin.
Yeah.
And no matter what I faced, and no matter what I went through, I always knew there was more out there for me.
Yeah.
There's more out there for me. And I've always held on to that belief. Even when I was sleeping on that mattress, I always thought to myself, there's more out there for me.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. There were times where, you know, we eating that £1 nugget and chips from Big John's.
Yeah.
Had me thinking, yo, this is tough. But I always felt like I'm gonna get out of this.
Yeah.
And keep moving forward, you know.
Yeah. So what were you doing to get by? So correct me if I'm wrong, but emergency accommodation, you still have to pay for your bills.
Yeah. So obviously you have to sign on one aspect of it. And then also I've been doing a lot of cash in hand jobs, cleaning. Man, I was cleaning houses, man. I was doing house removals.
Yeah.
I was doing promoting. I was doing anything, brother. You know what I'm saying? Anything I could get cash. I was on it, you know. But from a legal perspective, you know what I mean? I guess like I didn't want to touch the roads. That was also a big part of me wanting to do what I wanted to do.
Was you ever tempted to go down that route?
Of course.
Yeah.
You know, of course you're tempted.
Yeah.
You can't not be tempted, but there's a strength in wanting to find a new way, go down a new route. You know what I mean? No matter how strong the temptation is, I don't want to go down that route because that's the traditional route, and I believe we could be better.
Yeah.
You know, and still make it by not having to do that.
Yep.
You know, so I was determined to not go down that route.
So I'm guessing if you're doing house removals and stuff, your crib must have been nice, man.
Yeah,
so
when I moved out of the emergency accommodation into the supported accommodation, which was the YMCA, when I was doing the house removals, you know, and that's another thing about being resourceful and finding wins in every occasion. Yeah, man, I'll be like saying to you know, I think his name was Pete at the time, man. He's saying like, Pete, like, can I take this? Like, no, you're only gonna send it or throw it away. Like, do you need this?
Did he know your situation?
Yeah. He knew I was in the YMCA. He dropped me off after, you know what I mean? And I said to him, like, is this TV? Yeah. Can I take it? you gotta try it. You know? So I'll be like, if you man don't want this, can I take that? And I think he knew, like, you know what I mean, the kids flipping living in the YMCA, man. Take the TV, man. You know what I mean? Or take the carpet. Or take the painting, man. You know, and that one painting I got from one house removal. Never forget the guy, man. Talking to the guy, and he lived in a affluent area in Sutton Coldfield, like Four Oaks way, and we were moving stuff from the house, and he's saying, I want to get rid of this painting. The guy, man, I remember looking at Pete, I remember talking to the guy, I remember saying, like, can I take this painting? Yeah. And I guess he was like, yeah, sure. It didn't mean anything to him, but the picture at the time was called The Crossing.
Okay.
And it's a picture by Simon Combs. and I remember I put the picture on my wall
Yeah.
in the YMCA, and it's such a prominent picture. It's wildebeests
Okay.
moving from one side of like a barren wasteland, crossing a river into this fruitful,
Yeah.
lush forest environment.
Yeah.
And that represented my life.
Of course. Of course.
And I never forgot that painting, man. Like, it made me appreciate art on such a deeper level. I felt like that painting found me.
Yeah.
And I was at the crossing. You know what I mean? I was going from the barren wasteland I felt
Yeah.
to
I get
better.
that.
You know, and I'll never forget that, man.
I get that. I'm guessing as well, living in emergency accommodation. So if you've got all this in your crib, there must have been people worse off.
Yeah. So
hardly any. In a room.
100%. So, you know, so we moved out of the emergency accommodation into the YMCA, which was supported accommodation.
Yeah.
Which I feel like there were people in the emergency accommodation that didn't have much, and then in the YMCA you still faced with that scenario in supported accommodation. And like, I never forget a story where one time I was in the resident lounge in the YMCA. I was reading. I used to read a lot, spend a lot of time down there. You know, and I was reading one time, and a young guy came to me and said, "Gabe, like, you always reading, man.
Yeah.
Can I read with you? You know what I mean? Or can you get me on a reading thing?" I was like, "Cool." So I got him this Earl Nightingale book, man. Small, thin book, man.
Yeah.
Thought, you know what? This is an easy one to get into the mindset thing.
Yeah.
I said, "I'll come knock on what you doing." And knock on, I'll drop you the book round, man, get you started. And obviously, in my mind, I felt like everyone's crib is gonna be padded, kitted out like mine. You know, I'd got all the cutlery, the kettle set. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I remember knocking on, and I said, "Oh, like, yo, bro, I'm here. I'm outside." He opened his door, man, and all I seen in the room was an ironing board, man. I said to myself, man, it's peak, man. You know what I mean? Like, even when you're at the bottom, still bottom. It's still worse in the bottom, bro. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you think, oh man, I got it tough. And it's like, someone still got it tough in a tough situation.
So was that like a turning point for you?
I was already hustling. I was already on my job, you know. So around that time, I'd already started becoming a resident rep for the YMCA. So I was already doing things that were proactive.
Yeah.
But it's more of an indicator of kind of remembering that even though you're in a bad situation, you can still be in a worse situation within a bad situation, you know.
Yeah.
And just to be reminded of that.
It's a powerful way to look at it.
You got to look at it that way.
It's a very powerful way to look at it. So you just mentioned about being a resident rep.
Yes.
Yes. So explain to me what that is. What was responsible for?
So when I was living in the YMCA, they have resident reps, right?
Okay.
And essentially, a resident rep is someone who represents the residents within the YMCA.
Yeah.
So, you know, looks at what's going on in the YMCA and is there any changes we need to make, and, you know, are there any improvements we can make, and why?
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, the first 3 times I got asked to be a resident rep, I said no.
Yeah.
For like, the last thing people want being in a YMCA in a scenario like this is someone knocking on their door, almost like a prefect, saying, "Oh, what changes you want?"
Yeah, I get that.
YMCA 40. You don't want to hear that, man.
Yeah,
you know, everyone. I ain't got no food in my fridge sometimes, man. You don't want. The last one is me knocking on your door asking what you want changed to, man. I just want to eat.
Yeah.
That's what I want changed.
I get that.
You know, so I kept saying no. And then I think like the 4th time I got asked, I said, "I'll do it. Only if I can do it my way." And they're like, "That's fine, you can do it your way." So, you know, I started doing little things like, you know, hearing that at the time the council might have been cutting funds to support workers. So I wrote a letter to the council, you know, going to Parliament a few times on behalf of the YMCA with St. Basil's, advocating for young people going through homelessness, you know, Centre of Homelessness Impact, speaking on behalf of young people that are going through homelessness, sitting with MPs at the time, talking about changes that we wanted to make. And then, you know, even more practical things like changing policies and procedures within the YMCA, which is my first kind of interaction with understanding how businesses at a level like the YMCA will be operate. So, you know, adhering to their policies and their procedures that, you know, pertains to the way the YMCA runs. So I got that experience, you know, changing policies that hadn't been changed for so long. And then, you know, I was invited to join the housing subcommittee. And then we were looking at policies and procedures just to do with housing. And then after being on the housing subcommittee, I got invited to be a trustee. you know, looking at policies and procedures and strategies to run the whole organization. So
Okay.
looking at all the committees'
Yeah.
information, collating strategies
Yeah.
on how to run the organization based on that. And then, you know, when I joined the board, I was 21, I think, at the time.
Okay.
And, you know, the youngest trustee in 180
Yeah.
years for the.
I need to give you flowers for that because
Appreciate
youngest trustee in 180 years is
It's-
massive.
Yeah,
it's massive.
it's a big one. And I think, you know, for a charity as prominent as
Mhm.
the YMCA to break a tradition like
Yeah.
that and take a risk
Yeah.
and say, you know, we're going to put a young man
Yeah.
in position
Yeah.
to, you know, make change
Yeah.
and represent young people from that perspective and residents. You know, we want to break that 180 year,
Yeah.
you know, tradition, you know, so
Yeah.
we broke that. And you know, following on, man, got the room built after me at the YMCA now, you know, the Imevbore suite
That's
to
huge.
represent the
That's
change that was made.
Yeah.
You know, so anyone that goes for the YMCA and sees that suite now, they can go in, read the plaque, and understand that if they're in a situation I was in, they can do the same thing, you know. And I think it's important that people can see that and represent that, you know.
Yeah, and people can see that, represents that, but also they can relate to that as well. Seeing a young black man be the youngest trustee in 180 years is huge.
Appreciate
It's
that,
huge.
my brother. Thank you, my brother.
So just touching on the relationship you have with your mom as well. Do you have a relationship with your mom now?
Yeah. So one of my main things when I was in the YMCA, I had a lot of time to reflect, man.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget one of the night concierge staff. Well, two of the night concierge staff, really. Rex and Jamal, man. I used to spend hours and hours just politicking and deep chats with Rex and Jamal, man. And these were very mature, wise guys, man.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, I used to talk with Jamal and Rex, man, and Jamal used to say, Gabriel, that's what he used to say. I remember him all the time. He used to say, Gabe, listen, man, your mom's your mom and you only get one mom. And, you know, he say, oh, but I'm angry about this and I'm angry about that.
Yeah,
Blah, blah, blah. I say, listen, you need to wise up, man, and understand that, you know, you only get one mom.
Yeah.
And, you know, she's been through hardships herself and, you know, you should fix that relationship. And I think, again, going back to the male role models, when you hear that different perspective, you're able to sit and reflect. So that's what I did, man.
Yeah.
I used to reflect and you say, you know what, I think personally, the man that I want to be is a man that provides for his family, right? And a man that keeps his family together.
Yeah.
So I made it a mission to go back home and repair relationships. And I was able to do that, one, because I changed the way I thought.
Yeah.
And two, because of an opportunity that came up with National Grid. So the opportunity that came up with National Grid allowed me to earn an income to come back home, repair that relationship.
Okay. So one of the nicest things I've seen, just touching on this quickly. So you won the third sector award for Future Faces, so the GBYPY award in 2023.
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you had your mum, your nan.
Yeah, nan.
Yeah, your nan there as well.
Aunties as well.
The aunties as well, all celebrating with you when you won that award.
Yeah, and that's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's that change.
Yeah.
So I had two of my best friends there.
Yeah.
I had my mom, my nan, my auntie, my brother.
Yeah.
And two of my best friends. And I think that's what I want to represent.
Yeah.
Winning is not just winning for me.
Yeah.
It's winning for my family, for my people. You know, being in a situation where you go from being in fractured relationships to be able to be in a situation where you can win an award for what you've done from the hardship you face, but bring your family with you to represent that change. You are representing change in motion.
Yeah.
Like I said, man, beating the odds, man.
Yeah.
You know, what are the odds of going through that and being able to come back to that scenario with your family and your people there with you to celebrate that win?
Yeah.
You know, so
how do you think that made your family feel? Or how do you hope?
I hope it made them feel that, you know, Gabe's on the way.
Yeah.
You know, Gabe is someone that defies the odds.
Yeah.
And Gabe is someone that's committed to defying the odds to make sure that we're in a position where life doesn't have to be the same for us. And, you know, this award represents Gabe getting to that place because, you know, to start from below zero is hard enough. Just to get back to zero, you know, and then go from zero to, you know, onwards is another challenge in and of itself. So I wanted it to represent, you know, even if I'm starting from a place where it's below zero, I got that ambition to not one, just focus on myself and try to get myself in a better position, but two, bring my family along with me.
Yeah.
And I would rather it be more of a challenge to bring my family and my friends along with me than try to just succeed alone, and
of course.
and that's the type of man I am, man.
Yeah.
I'll go the extra mile for my family
Yeah.
and my people,
Yeah. So what advice would you give to young professionals looking at getting onto boards? Would that be something you'd advise, you'd discourage?
I would 100% say, board experience for me, as long as it's a viable board, actually at any level, really.
Yeah.
I'd say the good thing about being a trustee, and one thing I've learned from being a trustee, is being able to look at things from a strategic perspective.
Okay.
And I think one thing experience gives you in business is the ability to look at things more long term.
Yeah.
And that's what boards do. They don't do things operationally. They look at all the operational data and then devise a strategy to give to the organization to run operationally. So, being on a board allows you, if you've got your own business and you're, a young entrepreneur, you're able to assess things from more of a strategic standpoint.
Yeah.
And I think that sets you ahead from your competition. And that also allows you to not be afraid to speak to stakeholders who might be in certain positions of power. When you're a trustee, you're running an organization. Even if you're a young trustee, you're still involved in running an organization. The decisions you put forward go towards creating results for an organization. So you essentially, when you're on a board, you're able to, gain confidence in yourself and your own decision making. You might have found in business, sometimes you might get nervous when you might be speaking to a big or a large client because you think, oh, am I too young? Or am I
good enough?
But when you're on a board, you diminish that feeling because, I'm dealing with highly professional people that are on this board, might have a wealth of experience in business, but what I say on this board is just as valuable as what they have to say. And that allows you to build confidence. So when you're making executive decisions or you're making decisions with very powerful stakeholders, you're confident in what you're delivering because of the experience you've gained while being on the board. So I'd always say, if an opportunity for you to join a board comes up, you should take that.
Course. So how do you learn to prioritize all the stuff you've got going on in your life with your business and your career? How do you learn to prioritize certain things?
I think.
Do you ever say no? Have you learned how to say no to certain opportunities?
We're not necessarily saying no yet. I guess, if certain opportunities do come up and they don't necessarily align, I'm very sure on what I choose to do. It's not a saying no thing. But it's just knowing what aligns with the goals you've got set out. If an opportunity aligns with, our business objectives or my personal objectives, and it makes sense, I'm more inclined to say yes and figure out how we can work around that. There's a lot of time in the day to prioritize things if we need to. And I think it's about focus. And the most important thing for me, like even, one of my home screens on my phone, my lock screen images, is the word focus. Because I always want to be reminded, of being focused. I think it's the most important thing. And I try to minimize distractions as much as I can. Because I think, if you aren't focused, you're leaving yourself open to not be able to see if the right opportunity comes along. Focus is the really important thing, and that's knowing what your North Star is,
Yeah, I get that. Do you ever feel like you've achieved a lot? You're 28, right?
Yeah.
So you have achieved a lot in life.
Yeah.
Do you feel like...
Not yet. I mean, I'm grateful for the things that we've done, youngest trustee, having a room built after me, the clients we've got with Zed, other opportunities we are coming up now with F5 and stuff like that. I'm grateful for these opportunities, but I think I'm not even close to the pinnacle of what I believe I'm going to achieve in life. So I think when you, don't get me wrong, I allow myself to have fun when the moment permits itself. But I think because of where I believe I will be, I tend to refrain from getting excited. I take more of a stoic approach, just because I feel that remaining grounded is very important for the heights that I know we're gonna reach.
Yeah. Okay. So with Z Digital as well, so it's a fast growing tech
Yeah,
company here over in the UK.
Yeah.
What's one part of the journey that you
Mhm.
found so far that a lot of people overlook when it comes to entrepreneurship?
I think patience, man. I think,
Okay.
especially in this day and age, very fast moving. You know, bite-sized social media changes the way you look at things. Quick
Yeah.
dopamine hits. You want things to happen now all
Yep.
the time. And I know people say, business is a long-term game, but you really have to understand patience
Mhm.
and actually look at patience as an art form.
Yep.
I think sometimes patience is more of a buzzword.
Yep.
People say you gotta be patient and whatnot, but you actually have to analyze patience. Dissect what patience means.
Yep.
Embody patience at certain times. I think patience and focus are very, very strong tools to utilize. In your pursuit of success. So for me, it's like understanding patience. At moments when you want to go,
Yep.
sometimes you have to know, actually, it's better to be patient right now, and wait until the opportunity is right.
Great answer. Great answer. So we're just going to move on now to life lessons,
Mm-hmm.
what you've been taught and what you've
Yes.
learned in your life so far. So what's something you had to heal from before you could grow?
I think definitely healing from abandonment with,
Mhm.
with my dad,
Okay.
not having my father around in my life. I think, having to heal from that.
Yep.
And I think for me, I was able to look at it from a perspective of saying, not having my father around enabled me to think about the man I wanted to be,
Yep.
and create that man, you know, with how I operate in life and how I'll choose to be as a father when I am one,
Yeah.
how I'll choose to be as a husband when I am one, and how I show up as a friend,
Okay.
how I show up as a family member.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that's constant work that I'm always going through, but I
Yeah.
think for me, like, when you're younger and you trying to traverse those emotions, it's difficult.
Yeah.
So I think definitely healing from that abandonment is something I had to and continuously reconcile with. And I think that has definitely shaped me into the man I am
Yeah.
today and continue to grow to become.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic answer. So what does the phrase "your story is what you make it" mean to you?
Oh man, that's how I close off a lot of my
I know.
taglines, man. You know what I mean? Your story
I
is
know.
what you make it, and to what the future holds, man. I
Yeah.
think your story is what you make it. I could have been defined by growing up in a single parent
Mm.
household. I could have been defined by going through homelessness. I could have been defined by, not having a father around, and,
Yeah.
and I could have been defined by these things.
Yeah.
I could have been defined by struggle. I could have said, these things are who I am,
Yeah.
and this is where I'll
Accept it.
always
Yeah.
be,
Yeah. Yeah.
But my story is what I make it. And, I think every day you have the opportunity, and this is how I think you should look at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think, a lot of life is about perspective. And, you should look at a new day as a new opportunity for you to define
Yeah.
what you want your life to be. And every day, we write a new line to our story, and I think when you look back at your life, it is going to be like a story, and you want your story to be what you made it to be. I think if I'm to look back on my life, I want to say, you know what? Yeah, regardless of what I
Mm.
went through, yeah, I
Mm.
wrote my story, man.
Yeah,
You know
man.
what I mean?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did my thing, and I went through it the way I wanted to, and that's how I look at it, by saying your story is what you make.
Yeah. Of course. What's the next chapter for you?
I think the next chapter is definitely we're continuing to grow Z.
Yep.
Obviously, we've got our largest clients being HSBC,
Yep.
National Grid. We want to continue to service our clients in the
Yep.
best way possible, whilst gaining new clients in that process. Also, I got a business coming out with my friends, close
Yep.
friends. We got F5 coming out, Formula F5,
Yeah.
which is
Shout
going to
out
be
F5.
shout out
Yeah.
F5, man. So that's going to be a pre-workout, a hydration drink, and all things fitness. So we've got those things on the horizon, which is very exciting for us. And also a lot of personal development. I think I'm still growing as a man.
Yep.
I'm excited to see what the future looks like for me, for Gabriel Imevbore as a man. And you know, definitely I'm in the gym right now as well, man. I'm trying to get tonk, you know what I mean? So I'm trying to work on my fitness game too. So that's what the future's looking like right now.
Man. And what do you hope people remember you for?
We're looking at legacy. I think, you know, like I said very early on, it's defying the odds. I think if anyone was to look at my story and say, you know what, I've come from a similar place that Gabe came from, and I want them to say, you know what, I can defy the odds. You know, I can look at my life from a statistical perspective, and it may look like the odds are bleak. But even though the odds are bleak, I can still overcome those odds. And, you know, I think overcoming those odds is very important to do. You know, going back to the phrase, your story is what you make it. I like for people to look at me and say, you know what, he's inspired me to defy my own odds of what it looks like for me statistically. And that doesn't matter what background you come from. If you're facing hardship, I'd like for people to look at my journey and say, you know what, I'm going to look at hardship from a different perspective, and I'm not going to, you know, throw in the towel because I'm facing hardship now. I want to change the way I think about it and say, you know what, I want to defy my own odds. So, you know, if people are to look at my journey and, you know, see the trajectory of my life, I'd like for them to think, you know what, man, I can defy the odds too.
No, shout out to you. You inspire me, and I'm proud of you.
Appreciate you.
Doing a lot, and you're doing good things in this big city, man.
Thank you, my bro.
Appreciate it, my bro.
Yeah, man. Jeez.
Thank you.